Hello everyone. So we've got the second part of Happy Ever After. Mr. Bear gets alarmed to read. And we got to the part where Mrs. Bear and the baby bear were trying to remember the code for the new alarm system that had been put into their home. But Mr. Bear wasn't happy, if you remember, because they'd written it down on paper and they put it in the bag, and even baby bear put it on his paw, and that wasn't the point of that. It was about remembering it to keep them safe. So I wonder where we got to here. It was where Mr. Bear maybe thought, oh, having a different code every week or every day, let's see what happens. Mrs. Bear and Baby Bear rolled their eyes, but Mr. Bear made them promise they would memorise the new code, so they've got to keep it in the head and not written down. But soon Mr. Bear decided that it still wasn't enough, so he called Wizard Security once more. There you go, said the man. Now you've got the best system money can buy. Separate alarms in each room, cameras inside the cottage, put even more things in there, and in the garden, and a panic button that connects you directly to the forest police, so even more security. Mr. Bear relaxed again. That night, just after the three bears had gone to bed, there was a terrible noise. Ding, 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 ding. And all the alarms had gone off at once. Goodness me, that would have shocked them all. Mrs. Bear grabbed Baby Bear. Mr. Bear ran around yelling, and the forest police arrived, lights flashing and sirens wailing. So it alerted the forest police, thinking there was a problem in their home. You can calm down now, said Mr. Bear. You can calm down now, Mr. Bear, said a policeman, once the alarms had stopped. We're pretty sure no one was trying to break in. These complicated alarm systems can sometimes be too sensitive. A squirrel might have set it off, or even a mouse. Oh, terrific, muttered Mrs. Bear. Then they took Baby Bear back to bed. After that, the three bears were very careful that night. But hardly a day went by without one of the alarms going off, and sometimes all of them at once. Three bears got to know the forest police rather well. They had to keep coming. Oh dear, that would have been really a big disturbance. Then one day, much to Mr. Bear's surprise, the alarms didn't go off. They didn't go off the next day either. Mr. Bear was very pleased. You see, he said, grinning, I knew they would settle down eventually. Of course you did, dear, said Mrs. Bear. For some reason, Baby Bear giggled, and Mrs. Bear frowned at him. Now, what shall we have for tea? It was a happy and relaxed Mr. Bear who went to bed that evening. He fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, but suddenly he was awake, his heart pounding. He could hear footsteps up the stairs, and he couldn't hear any alarms. Oh no, he was wondering what on earth is happening. Mr. Bear crept out of the bedroom and onto the landing. He looked down, and there was Mrs. Bear in the hall tapping the code into the keypad. She glanced up at him, and a guilty expression passed over her face. Then he scowled. I wonder what she was doing. All right, you caught me, she said, and sighed. We've been turning the alarms off every night. We just couldn't cope with it anymore. Oh no, what if someone had broken in, moaned Mr. Bear. What if... Well, they didn't know, did they, said Mrs. Bear. And what if you're just worrying too much? What if your alarms are making our lives a misery? Mr. Bear realised Mrs. Bear was right. Now it was his turn to feel guilty. The alarms certainly hadn't stopped him worrying, had they? In fact, they'd only made things much worse. And he was worrying more and more alarms and thinking that somebody would come in, but actually he could have relaxed. Mr. Bear did a lot of thinking that day and finally came to a decision. He called Wizard Security for the last time, and it wasn't long before all the alarms were gone. The next morning, Mr. Bear woke up in a cheerful mood. What a lovely day, he said. Let's go for a walk. So there they are, and he's feeling much calmer, much more relaxed, much happier in himself. They set off their usual path through the forest. Baby Bear skipped ahead of his parent. Suddenly, Mrs. Bear stopped and looked at her husband. Oh no, I forgot to lock the front doors, he said. We better go back. Mr. Bear turned to her. For an instant, he felt a bit panicky, but then he smiled and shrugged and took her arm. Not to worry, he said as they walked on. I'm sure it'll be all right. Hope it will be. And so the three bears live quietly and calmly, but most of all, happily ever after. So after that big surprise of Goldilocks coming into their house and trying to make it more secure, in fact, it made them worry a little bit more. And Mr. Bear eventually learned to be a bit calmer and approach things a little bit differently. So that's the end of that one. We'll start a new book tomorrow, and sleep well, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow for your learning. Good night.